All right, thanks, Brad. I appreciate that, and I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful everybody else is here. So I'm gonna clean. Let me clean it up a little bit first. There's a lot of people involved with those recovery homes, and I know Brad knows that, but a guy by the name of Barry he handles two of the houses, and of course Harold is a big part of what we do. We do it as a team, and I believe it's an extension of what's done at Samaritan Colony, which is really out of any other way to describe it but love. Just love for people that have suffered and that have shown a willingness to do whatever they have to do so they don't have to suffer anymore or hurt the people they love. And it's a real blessing to be able to do that. So I just want to make sure I'm just a small piece of that puzzle, but together it's a huge puzzle. And of course, the guys that are in the recovery homes themselves, because they police and monitor themselves on a regular basis. So anyway, I'm Mark Christopher. I'm an alcoholic. I've been in recovery a little over 9 years. My sobriety date is 6/24/2011. We were talking before here. So I do most of my meetings in Aberdeen. I have most of my sobriety at the Wilder building. Of course, people are familiar with that. I really I say cut my teeth in Alcoholics Anonymous at the early risers meeting down there at 7:30 in the morning. That's really where I first started showing up on a daily basis. And of course, I was doing night meetings too, but I don't know, early risers was a big deal for me. It's a lot of reasons is to just get my days started like that, and there was a lot of guys there that spent time with me. Some of them are no longer around, and some of them are. I'm grateful for them all. But I would go down to that meeting in the morning, and before my wife went to work, and I knew she wouldn't have to worry about me. She'd know I was at a meeting. I'd worried her enough, and it was. That's a lot of the reason I did it was just so she'd know that I was safe first thing in the morning. And what happened was I'd go in there, and they gave me a key real early on. That was a big deal for me. And I'd go in and make coffee, and about 30 or 45 minutes before the meeting would start, and then there were some guys that showed up, and there's a fellow by the name of Ray, and another one named Fred, and another guy by the name of Howard, and he's not around anymore. He's gone on, but and I'm gonna forget a lot of people, but we would have meetings before the meeting. You hear about that, and then meetings after the meeting, and I was just really just trying to absorb everything I could about Alcoholics Anonymous and a new way to live. So anyway, I'll go back to. Let me just finish with that. So I did meetings. I did 540 meetings in my first year, and I'm not bragging about that. That's just what I did. I just made Alcoholics Anonymous the primary thing in my life, and I was very fortunate to have a wife that allowed me to do that, and a couple of boys that were okay with me doing it too, because they weren't okay with what I was before doing that. Is why they let me do it, and I believe they had seen that, I wasn't always out of control. For a long time, I maintained and provided, but I was probably usually out of control, but I could maintain anyway. But I provided for a long time, but it eventually got to the point where I couldn't even provide, and that's kind of was my bottom. We'll get to that later. But so I did a lot of meetings down there. Now I do 3 meetings a week, normally sometimes 4. This will be 4 for me this week. And I do church on Sunday morning at the treatment center. I've been doing that. I'm committed to doing that and been doing that every Sunday with the exception of a couple of Sundays when we're on vacation or something for ever since I got out of the treatment center. So I'm 54 tomorrow. And I feel, mentally and physically better than I have probably ever. I mean, it may be hard to believe, but I really do. My sponsor tell me my mind still lies to me. Sometimes it'll tell me I'm 35, and all of a sudden something will hurt, and I'll go, oh, I'm 54, you know. But hey, I'm grateful to be here, and at 54, I can get up and be a responsible man today. I get to be a father today, a husband, a friend. I get to be because of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. So I was born in Pinehurst at more regional. I grew up on behind Poplar Street on Crest Drive, over 1304. My brother still lives there, my younger brother. I'm one of 4 boys. There's 3 of us left. My older brother died recently. Of course, I believe he's with the Master now. He loved God, and so I'm okay with that too. I miss him, but I'm okay with it. My mom and dad have gone on, but I still have 2 brothers here. Have a lot of other extended family, and like I said, I have a wife and 2 boys. I've been with my wife for a long, long time, but I was raised on Crest Drive, and I'm going to try not to jump around too much. I'm just try to tell you what it was like, what happened, what it's like now, try to share some experience, strength, and hope, but I'll probably be all over the place. But anyway, when I was young, I knew right away I'm not quite right. I tell this example, when I was in the 4th grade, I went to Berkeley in Aberdeen Elementary School and then over to the Aberdeen Middle School, and that's where I was in 4th grade at Berkeley there and Aberdeen Elementary. I remember looking out this window out of a classroom in the 4th grade, and I was looking out across the playground, and I tell us about every time I talk, it's a big deal to me. I remember thinking, what's the matter with me? Why am I so nervous? I could just like rattle out of my chair. I always felt like I didn't quite have the answers like everybody else. I didn't quite know what was going on, and I think my mother knew that. My brothers called me the gold one. My mama held me a little closer maybe, but I think she knew I was maybe a little more insecure than others, and had some other issues, you know. But all I know is I felt like I was just nervous, kind of always coming out of my skin, and I just did the best I could. I was raised in a good family. You know, my mom was from Dublin, North Carolina, just country girl. She didn't drink, never smoked, didn't believe in cussing. Worst she might get out of her mouth is shit every now and then or something, but that would be once a year, and then everybody pay attention. When she did that, you know, like, uh-oh, mama cussed. And but she really was, she was raised in the country. She believed in God. She turned towards God, and she was what I know today as a true believer. She used God in her life. She tried her best to pass that on to us. And I used to say, you know, I've told my story behind the podium before when I'd say, well, I really didn't get anything out of it. And what I know today, that's not right. I got a lot out of it, and I can tap into that now. You know, I watched my mom do a lot of things. She taught me a lot of things, even though I didn't use them for a lot of years. And I did it my way for a lot of years. I find myself a lot of times saying, I'll tell somebody, me and Harold will be having a conversation, I'll say, you know, my mama used to say, you know, so I can tap into those things she taught me, so they weren't for naught. But, you know, my dad, I love my dad. He suffered from untreated addiction, and the difference between me today and my dad when he was 54 is I know what I suffer from today, and not only that, I have a solution. I know how to treat it. He just didn't know what he suffered from, and never was introduced to how to treat it, which is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. He never got that opportunity. So a big part of my story is my home life, and you know, I heard somebody say one time, the older I get, the better my childhood gets. You know, the older I get, I look back at it, I really had a good childhood. They provided. They had a place at the beach, took us to the beach from the time I was 7 on up. We set gill nets, flounder gig, clammed, did all stuff that's really cool for boys. But you know, when we come home, as my mom, my dad didn't make a whole lot of money, and I remember my mom. She prayed every day. She'd sing hymns, and just a good country girl. And a lot of times there was turmoil and confusion in my house because of my dad's actions. He might have spent some money he shouldn't have spent, or just mentally torturing her. And I remember thinking when I was young, like, she's praying to God, and she's asking for all this help from God, and my daddy shows on the scene, and he's torturing her. And so I started to doubt God early in life, and I remember thinking, where's that God now? You know, where she been singing and praising Him and praying to Him, and where's He at now? While Daddy's doing this stuff to her, and what I really did was I started to dislike my father. And when my dad died, I was still in active addiction. And I remember standing at the foot of his bed thinking, and I was thinking this. I was thinking, he knows I don't like him, and I know I don't like him. And what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is who I really didn't like was me. My dad did a lot of things, but I did too in active addiction. So, you know, that's what I'm really talking about is the resentment I had for my dad for years. And it was just tearing me up. And I remember telling my parents, as soon as I graduate, I'm out of here. And I just, a lot of it was I just want to do what I want to do. I was constantly right on the edge of getting in trouble, running with the wrong crowd. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 11 or 12 in the 8th grade, and by the time I was in the 9th grade, I was 13, and I started, I tell this usually too, I drank, first time I really remember the effects of mind-altering chemical was I broke my arm, and I went over to the hospital, and I remember the nurse saying, I want you to count to 10, and she gave me that shot, and I felt it when it hit me, and it's just, like, there it is. You know, like, I like that. And then I was out, and I worked back up, and I remember that feeling there briefly before I went out. And, you know, the next time I really remember feeling that feeling, I was in the back seat of my brother's car in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. It was a old black 1976 Monte Carlo, and I forced down a couple of 16-ounce Budweisers, and I felt that same feeling again. And so that's a big deal to me too, because I like to get heavens didn't part of it or anything, but I knew I liked it and I was going to keep doing it. And so kind of that's how I realized I could tap into that feeling anytime I wanted it, you know. And I call it the warm blanket, like just that feeling of comfort, you know. And so I was a blackout drinker. From early on, I could maintain sometimes, but sometimes not so much. And I'd black out, brown out. People would remind me of things I did, and I just go, man. Okay. You know, and then the blackouts, and I treated people that I loved like I didn't love them when I was in those conditions, and worried a lot of people, scared a lot of people. But I held on for a long time. I always worked hard. You know, I did good in school, went to Wilmington with my brother. We worked in some restaurants down there and just more drinking. And I remember, I can remember drinking shot, just sit down with a half a gallon and some buddies, and we just started drinking shots. And I didn't like the taste of it. Matter of fact, I kind of hold my breath and shoot it down just to get it in my gut so I could get the feeling going, and maybe start with a little chaser in my mouth and then do the shot and chase it with some chaser just to get it down. But by the end, you know, it was just I acquired a taste for it. I didn't like the way it tasted to begin with, but in the end, I knew what's coming, so I got used to a taste for pretty much any type of alcohol. I got my first DWI, my only DWI actually, the night I turned 21. I was headed out. I was at a party. I was headed out of Aberdeen, and Aberdeen police got me, and it was on my birthday, and I'll never forget. I obviously shouldn't have been driving. I was in bad shape. I was pretty wrecked, and I looked up at the guy. I was hoping for the best, and I said, "It's my birthday," hoping for a little baby sympathy or birthday pity, and he said, "Well, happy birthday. Get out of the car." And I went and blew and got a DWI, and so that was after I got back from Wilmington, working with my brother, drinking. We were just drinking all the time, and just everything I did. Back then I wasn't drinking at work at that point, but I couldn't wait to get off of work so I could drink. Like it was drink, it was everything was when can I drink or when can I do other things? Obviously I'll tell you a little later. Drugs is a part of my story, but it all started with alcohol and it truly ended with alcohol. But it's just my life was it was about. Back then it was just, I thought, having fun, having a good time, I had no idea what it was warming up to, And so what I did, we came back and we had a little restaurant here in town and did okay for a little while. Would have probably done better if I hadn't worked there. Drinking and, when I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the things I realized is I had stole from every company I ever worked for. Every job I ever had, I stole something. And I'm not just talking about time. Of course, I stole a lot of that too. But tangible things like product, money, food, whatever it was. I would take things that weren't mine, like just this feeling of entitlement, like why not take it? And, I did the same thing at that business and hurt a lot of people besides myself. A lot of people were counting on that job. But anyway, that's just part of what my alcoholism and addiction was doing to me. But, I met my wife while we were working in that restaurant. We were both young. I met her. She was still in high school. She was real innocent. And so I'm very fortunate. I don't bore everybody with it, but I think I'm a real lucky guy. When I met my wife, I'm one of those guys who knew right away is love at first sight. She walked into the room, and I knew. Like I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life, and I went after it. I courted her, and we started dating, and I've been with her for the rest of my life ever since then. And she, wow, man, I know how much I loved her, and I still love her. And we had a couple of boys together, and I know how much I love them. And when I think of the powerlessness. Like the most powerful thing I had in my life, I believe at that time, was the love I had for them, for my wife and my boys. And in the end, I could not do the things I needed to do to take care of them and not hurt them. And if the power of the love I had for them wasn't good enough to keep me sober, then I knew when I got to treatment, they started talking about powerless. I knew I didn't have the power required because the most powerful thing I had was the love for my wife and kids, and I couldn't do it for them. I just couldn't on my own, So what happened was I went to left that business. Let's see, did I leave that? I believe I got fired from that job actually. Maybe it might have been a mutual thing where they said you got to go. We're gonna give you a chance to leave, but I left, and I went to work at Ingersoll Rand. It used to be Arrow up in Southern Pines. I worked there for about 5 years, and while I was there, I went to school at Sand Hills. I worked full time. Went to school at Sand Hills, and I got a degree in manufacturing engineering, and another degree in architectural AutoCAD, and man, I really kind of buckled down, got away from the old people and places, people I was hanging out with, and did okay, got that degree, and I went to work at a place called Power Boss in Aberdeen, and I started there as an industrial engineer, and me and Connie, of course, were still dating, and I did real well with that little 2-year degree, and what I did was I just hustled real hard. I worked. I'd show up early, leave late. I was in competition with guys who had 4-year degrees and higher, and I'd do things like I was that guy. I was the guy who would make sure everybody knew when I did something good, and make sure more people knew when you did something bad. And that's how I got ahead. Like, look at me, and then look at them. And I'd show up early. I'd just outwork them. I'm gonna make it here. And I knew these guys have got sheepskins, what they called them. I didn't have one. So I'd show up, a couple of hours earlier than everybody else, and leave a couple of hours later than everybody else, and just get after it. And next thing you know, I'm running an assembly line, and then I'm running an area, and the next thing you know, I'm running the plant, and it just I don't know. When I look back at it, it was almost like a whirlwind. Like things just started to take off, and I do want to say this though. There was a time when I did seek God at some level, maybe not like I do today, but I would pray and I'd know God was there. I knew I could see the evidence of God in my life. But the more success I had monetarily, the less I would spend time with God. And I believe today, if you'd have asked me when I went into treatment, hey, you think you're God? I'd have said, well, no, of course I don't think I'm God. But when I look back at it, I was acting like I didn't need God. And therefore maybe I was acting like I was God, and I sure wasn't seeking God or trying to use God at any point. I felt like I'd become successful, and I guess what the book said, I had arrived, I was traveling around the world. I spent a lot of time in the Pacific Rim. I spent enough time traveling that today I don't miss it. Like a lot of people might want to travel, but I did enough traveling that I don't miss it. I'm okay with just my simple little life in Southern Pine. Just let me go home to my dogs and my wife and my family, and try to help somebody else, and I'm good. I like the peaceful life. But the whole time I was traveling, I was drinking, and my drinking was getting out of control, and it's just a matter of time before I get another DWI. I remember when I got that DWI in 21, I was taking ADETS classes, and I remember the lady in those classes said, 2 out of 3 of you are going to get another DWI. And I remember saying, not me, because I ain't going to drink and drive again. It wasn't no time. I was drinking and driving. Of course, y'all all know that, or I wouldn't be here, right? But I was drinking and driving again, and so I was doing a little bit of cocaine and other things like that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just part of my story. But at the drinking, we had a place in business. We'd come down here to this place called Beef Eaters. We'd sit at the bar and drink all night, and then I'd drive home from there, and all the stories. The one eye shut, don't know how I got home, and can't see nothing without my glasses. Wake up and wonder where my glasses are. How did I get home? I done drove home, but. Anyway, it just kept getting a little more and more out of control. What I didn't realize is I heard something just recently. It said the chains of addiction are too soft to be felt until they're too hard to be broken. And I had no idea what was really going on. By the time I realized I had a problem, it's too late. I couldn't do anything about it myself anymore. I read that in the book, if I'd have maybe realized soon enough, I could have stopped, but I didn't, and I crossed that line. Now, I believe I was born with all these character defects, insecurity, fear, all of that. I had them all, and we dump that alcohol on them and other things, and they just get out of control, this selfishness and self-centeredness of it. That's what my experience with me is. I just become a person that I absolutely did not want to be. I didn't want to be that dude. But I was that dude. I stole from everybody that loved me and everybody I loved. I relate to the book all the way through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I had put our family in the hardest. My wife and the two boys. We were in having just dire straits financially because I was, I lost that job running that plant in 2006. Like I told you, I sobered up in 2011, so there were some years in there where I was really unemployable, couldn't do much, and I'd act like I was doing something, but really I was really just dragging it down. My wife and kids have been better off if I wasn't around. That's just the truth. I was dragging them down, and what happened was I quit drinking. I found opiates, and I started doing some pills, and continued with the cocaine. And I didn't drink. I hadn't drank for 12 years. When I got sober, but the night before I went to the colony, I drank a 6-pack of beer because I was so sick. I was hurting so bad just from not having what I needed to have to keep me from hurting. I talked my brother, the one that just recently died, Lee. I talked him into going. I just begged him to go. I said, man, just go get me a 6-pack, something to help me out. I can't make it, man. I'm just not gonna be able to make it. And he felt bad for me, loved me, and he went and got it, and he brought it back, and I drank it, and it didn't help. As a matter of fact, I think it made things worse. But so that was the last night I drank. But anyway, what happened was I had a lot of money. I had some money, and I did okay. I made good money. I was running this plant. My wife had a good job, and but man, when you're not working and you're doing the things I was doing, you can run through money like that, and it just vaporized. When I lost that job, I relate so well to that story and Bill Wilson's story where he put this business deal together, with these investors, and then he took a drink before it was going to go down, and the phenomenon of craving developed. He couldn't quit drinking. He ruined it. I did the same thing. I lost that job at the plant. I went up to Minnesota, met with another guy that was in the same kind of business. I could always sell myself. I sold myself on him. Said, hey, man, you want to build the product? I know how to build the product. I know the process. We'll build the product. He said, good deal. He said, you going home, you work from home. We'll build them up here. You tell us what to do. Man, it was a beautiful deal. I thought, yeah, I've hit it, man. I got it. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. And what I did was I cashed in my 401 from that other job, my family's retirement money. I went into that shop behind my house, and I didn't really come out of that shop until all that money was gone. And when I come out, I called that fella. I needed that job. It was so bad, and it had been a while. And I said, "Hey man, I'm ready to go." And he said, "Man, we ain't doing that no more. And we sure ain't doing that with you. We ain't heard from you in weeks. Where you come from?" And boy, it's just that I got started and couldn't stop. It all had to go away. I just kind of qualified myself. Slept on the couch for 8 years because I wanted to be in the bed with my wife in there in that house that I had helped pay for, and I just couldn't do it. I slept on the couch. I had to slip out and do what I do. A lot of nights I'd sleep out in that old ratty shop of mine. I heard a speaker one time say you ain't got to be homeless to live in a gutter. My shop out behind my house was my gutter, just a nasty, filthy place where I hung out to do what I do. I told some guys today, I said, I remember my wife would come, we got these kids, she's doing her best to raise them, and she'd come talk to me while I was in that shop, and she would stand with her back to the door and talk to me while I was in there because she didn't want to see what was going on in the shop. She didn't want to see what was in there or nothing. And then what happened was I started getting arrested. I started getting some charges. I stole some money from a local car dealership. Got charged with embezzlement, 14 felony counts, matter of fact. And slipped out of those. Got an attorney, got out of them, and got it all reduced to 2 misdemeanors. Let me tell you this, in case I forget, I paid all that money back. I made my amends, and paid my restitution and paid all that money back. I won't forget that. That was a big deal for me to be able to do that. But anyway, I got down to 2 misdemeanors and ended up getting a lot of probation, got some suspended sentences, and I just, I went back out doing what I do, I remember calling my wife one time, like I didn't do any of the probation they assigned for me to do. I didn't do any of that. I remember when the judge, a lot of people know him as Judge Webb in Moore County. He, a lot of people, if you've been in Moore County Court, you know him probably, but he's a good friend now. But I remember I was standing there and he was telling me I was going to have to pay this $6,600 and how I was going to be on all this probation and everything. And I was kind of arguing with my attorney because that's not what we agreed to. And then I remember he got my attention when he said drug test. And I remember thinking, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm not going to be able to do that. Turns out I could do that. I just sneaked the stuff in with me. I just did whatever I had to do to be able to keep using. But what happened was, I'm going to hurry up here. So I think I've qualified myself pretty well. But I got 2 more felonies and 2 misdemeanors. One of them was felony possession of cocaine, and one was altering a serial number on a firearm. And then I got a concealed carry, concealed weapon, and possession of paraphernalia. I got them all at one time, and so now I've got some drug charges with guns, and that ain't good. They don't like that. So I remember they arrested me, took me to jail. It was Darren Ritter by then. He don't mind. I asked him. I told him, could I ask him his name? He 12-step. He's actually got a 12-step me. He said I was in his truck, and he said, man, can't you see what you're doing to your family? Why don't you go get some help? And I was begging him. I was in front of that truck. I was begging him. I said, man, don't do this. I didn't know him from Adam. And I said, don't do this, man. Just I'll do just don't do this. Give him one more shot. And he said, oh, no, you're going to jail. And I said, man, you don't understand. I'm going to lose everything. It's going to be it for my wife and my kids. And he said, well, you're going to jail. And he took me to jail up at Moore County. And I don't know. I used to go into detail about when he arrested me and stopped me. But, I had one thing in my right pocket. It was an Opana, and I fished it out and ate it. And but you know what? I was standing there. He's searching my vehicle the whole time, and I could have got rid of that little bit of cocaine I had on me, and I didn't. And man, I asked myself that question while I was in that jail probably 1,000 times. Like, why didn't you get rid of that? Why? And the only thing I can figure, divine intervention. Like without that, I wouldn't be here today. I don't believe that was what did it. When he found that, he initially patted me down and he said, "Go stand over there." And I stood over there while he searched my Jeep, and it was in my pocket. And he come back to me and he said, "Come here one more time." And he said, "Empty your pockets." And that was it. He found that and he said, "Put your hands behind your back." And he got me in the truck and he said, "I want you to get some help. Can't you see what you're doing to your family?" And the reason, I'm going to tell you this real quick, the reason I got arrested that day was somebody told him where I was at and what I was doing. And told him that they thought I had something on me. And since I've been in recovery, that person has come to me and made an amends. And I actually sponsored that guy. Now that's a different way of thinking. Like my old way of thinking is, but he and we're the best of friends, man. Without him doing that, I don't believe I'd have anything. I don't believe I'd have my wife. I don't believe I'd have my kids if somebody hadn't have stepped in because I wasn't going to do it. So anyway, he took me to jail. I'm in jail, and called my wife, and I started lying like I always did. But she'd been getting wise the whole time. She's learning. Oh, yeah, I did want to tell you this. There was one time when I stole $20 out of my wife's pocketbook when we were so broke. And I wasn't working. I was dragging everybody down. And when I read that about Bill Wilson stealing out of his wife's slender pocketbook, that's another moment I had. I said, dang, I did that. I've done that. I remember taking $20 out of her pocketbook. There was 2 20s, and then I took 20. And when she asked me, did I get money out of her pocketbook, of course I lied and said no. That's one of those times that just kind of sticks with me. But I'm in jail. I called her. I started lying. And she said, oh, no, you ain't lying to me. She said, I know exactly what you're in there for, and I ain't coming to get you. And she said, your brother ain't coming to get you either. See, I had a brother, Jimmy, who would come to my rescue a lot of times. So anyway, I was talking to her one time on the phone, and she said, Mark, I'm filing for separation tomorrow. And she said, I was in jail. I was on the phone in jail. She said, I'm filing for separation. And it takes a year to get a divorce, and we'll see what you do about your problem in a year. And so I started crying. I was in jail. I started crying. I knew like the thing I loved the most in life, my family, is gone. So when I got out, I called a girl that works with pretrial counseling. I still work with her today. I work with her with a lot of guys trying to get them into treatment. Her name's Becky. And I told her I needed to go somewhere for a year because that's the number I heard from my wife, right, a year. And she said, no, you don't need a year. You just need 28 days down at Samaritan Colony. Go to Daymark and Pinehurst. Tell them you need to go down there. And I'll go down there. So I did that. I went to Daymark, called, talked to Robert. Robert started talking to me. He said, are you on any medicine? I said, yeah. I have to take these Lorcets for my back. He said, nah, we're total abstinence. I didn't even know what that word meant. I said, what does that mean? He said, you can't have nothing here. So anyway, I said, it ain't going to be good because I was only in jail a couple of days, and the truth was I'd gone right back to the doctor and lied and got a prescription for Lorcets, and I ended up eating that whole bottle that night, just what I do anyway. And but when I got to the colony, I was coming off of something called methadone, and it's terrible, man. It was just terrible. It was torture, but I made it. Like 18 days, very little sleep, trying my best to stay awake in class. But I knew that was my only shot at getting back to my family or putting my life back together. So what happened to me, I told you my sobriety date is 6/24, 2011, but I have another date that's real important to me. It's 7/10, 2011, and 7/10 is what I refer to as my awake date. That's the date I believe I woke up. I was in a chapel service in Samaritan Colony, and up until that date, I had just been the same old me in treatment, like selfish, self-centered. What about me? What about me? What about me? I don't care about you. Get away from me. We're in there in July. Give me that fan. I'm getting that pork chop. I'm getting this. I couldn't sleep. There was a dude in there I didn't like. He had to vacuum the floors. I'm crushing cookies up on the floors at night and passive aggressive. All that just out of control, And really, if they'd have called me, they'd kicked me out. I'm glad they didn't. But what happened was I was in there on a Sunday, and I took a little long here, but I was in there on a Sunday, and Harold, I didn't like Harold because he told me the truth all the time. It was tough on me. Of course, I love Harold today and the guys I work with. But Harold was in there on a Sunday, and he started talking about his son and how his son died as a result of this disease. And I remember thinking, Harold, I looked at Harold like I didn't like Harold at that time, but I knew one thing for sure: he had his act together. Like he'd come in, I felt like he commanded respect. He just did. He had his act together, man. Right down the way he's dressed, and he just looked like he had his act together. I knew I didn't have mine together, but he was up there, and this tough dude, I thought tough dude, he starts crying, talking about his son's death. I was there on the anniversary of his son's death, and when he started crying, I had this moment, and it was on July the 10th, 2011, where I really believe something happened to me then. I woke up, and I realized like life's passing me by, and life's too short. I don't want to miss any more time with my wife and kids, and I'm blowing everything, and I knew I was still blowing it in treatment, and I believe right then, in my experience, matter of fact, I know I did my third step right then. I'd already done a first step in the classroom, but I did my third step in Samaritan Chapel. I made up my mind to go through with the process, just like it talks about in Fred's story. And I had this feeling from then on that I was going to be okay. What I did was on Monday morning, I moved to the front of the class, from the middle of the class. I started watching and paying attention. I started trying to live the way they were telling us. I started to try and do, not just read the book, but do what the book said do. I started trying to follow directions and do what it said do, not just read it. I was always kind of reading it. We were reading it, but I started trying to really put it to work in my life. And I started to ask questions, and a lot of times I didn't understand, and sometimes I still don't understand, but I was trying to understand. I was trying how to use it. And, a lot of stuff happened there. I tried to go to a halfway house. They wouldn't let me go to a halfway house. And my wife wouldn't let me come home, and I'm scared to death. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know what to do. I had to ask to stay another 28 days. I did that. And, I remember that last Sunday, Harold was there, and we were in church, and he said, he's saying what he was grateful for, and Harold said, we're grateful Mark's going to stay another 28 days. And the Friday before that, my wife said she wanted me to come home. We don't want you home. She's saying things like, I finally got some peace because you're not around no more. And I don't want the boys to have to get used to you being gone because you're going to have to go to prison. And but that Sunday when Harold said that, I leaned over to my wife in church. She come to visit with the boys and my brother, and I said, I'm staying here. And she said, we want you to come home. So it's still kind of emotional because it's a big deal. And, Robert said, we're not going to send you to halfway house, Mark, because if you do that, you're going to, sure enough, grow away from your family. He said, we're going to send you home. We put families together. We don't tear them apart. And that's just my experience with my life. My wife, what he knew was I had shared everything with him. He knew I had a great home atmosphere. I had a wife, I had a license, I had a vehicle. I was 4 miles from the Wilder building where I could do 3 meetings a day. It was really set up for success. And then what they did, I had a guy ask me today in treatment, actually. Hopefully he's listening right now. His name's Dalton. He asked me a really good question. We were taking questions. He said, what do you think is the most important thing you did when you left treatment? And I told him, I think the most important thing I did when it happened before I left treatment is I got a sponsor. They helped me get a sponsor. And they handed me off to him. And his name was Frank. A lot of y'all know him. And he did one thing to me. He held me accountable to work in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. He started at the blank cover on the front of the book. We read everything. Roman numeral, we read it all. I didn't understand why we was reading all that. I don't know. I just told him I'd do whatever he said. And he took me through the steps. At 7 months, we had worked through the steps together. And I remember he told me, he said, Mark, you need to share more. And I said, well, I share quite a bit. He said, you need to share more. He said, it's time for you to start sponsoring people. He said, we're through the book, and now it's time for you to start taking people through the book. And that's what I did, and I haven't stopped since. I just keep working the steps. God continues to put people in my life. It continues to allow me to help them and them help me. I like what my sponsor taught me. He said, sometimes you'll be the sponsor, sometimes they'll seem like the sponsor, but you'll be doing it together. I do my gratitude list in the morning. That's one of the things he taught me to do. I do a lot of other spiritual readings. He kept it real simple for me. He said, we do the steps. That's what we do. That's where the relief is. And when I'm trying to control things again, I got a little lesson in that yesterday. I called him yesterday and said, Frank, I'm having a bad day. He said, oh, yeah, what's the matter? I said, well, won't nobody act like I think they should act? And he said, oh, you trying out for the job of director again. He said, you need to remember you were hired to be the actor. And he said, just be the actor. He kind of puts me in my place, but it helps me to talk to him and be held accountable to it. But, he kept it real simple for me. He said, listen, he told me a few things to do, work through the steps. I dealt with that resentment with my dad. What I found out about that resentment with my dad, is to say that real quick, is, my dad was in prison when I got married, and that was a big part of it. And he had done some terrible things. And when I really broke that resentment down, just like the book said, fear is bracketed for a reason. Fear was in the majority of my resentments, and what I was really afraid of is I had his genes. I'm going to be like him, or I can't help but be like him. The truth is, in a lot of aspects, I was worse than him. But what I was really afraid of is I couldn't be a good dad. I couldn't be a father. And that's just not true. It's just not true. With the help of Alcoholics Anonymous and staying close to God and a good sponsor and you guys, I can be all the things I want to be, and I get to be those things today. Frank told me, he said, listen, all these things I've told you to do, he said, it's okay to add anything you want, but don't ever take anything away. Like, always stick with the basics. I've added a lot of things. I love the Bible today. I didn't like that early on. I listen to the Bible on the way to work a lot. I listen to speaker meetings on the way to work. I have about a 35, 40-minute drive to work every day. And, I use that time productively to seek, to just try to learn spiritually. And it's kind of been how I've lived the last 9 years of my life, is to try and grow spiritually, just any way I can. I like to read it. I don't read a whole lot of books front to back, but I pick a lot of books apart, and I pray and ask God to read them with me, and He does. I try to be of service. I sponsor people. I've recently been doing something, Jacob's here. We do it on Saturday mornings. It's really kind of neat. We go with a group of older men. They asked us to help them cut wood on Saturday mornings, and a lot of guys from the program have helped us. And what they do is they sell that wood to feed an orphanage in Africa. And I was going to the gym. It's interesting because I have a relationship with God today, and I believe God communicates with me, and I feel Him, and I love Him, and I know He loves me, and that's something that never had to be. What I'm really telling you is I'm what my mother was. I'm a true believer. I've turned towards God, and I use God on a daily basis. But he was asking this guy that was cutting wood. He asked me for a couple of years. He's pretty persistent. He said, you ought to be cutting wood with us on Saturday morning instead of going to the gym. We're feeding these kids. We're taking care of this orphanage. And one Saturday morning, I was on the way to the gym, and it wasn't an audible voice, but this thing come from within and said, what are you doing, Go feed my kids. And I've never thought like that. And so I called that doctor that was cutting wood, and I said, I'm going to be splitting wood with you on Saturday mornings from now on, because I believe that's what God wants me to do. And I've learned to listen to that little voice from within, and it guide me through life. And hey, I know I talked about a lot of doom and gloom, but the main thing is I'd like to just I'd like to share a message of hope. Is I know hopeless, just like the doctor did in the book. When I was reading it, it nailed me, man. I was a hopeless variety. It wasn't going to be good. No way, no shape, no how, no form. I didn't go to prison. I should have. When I walked into court that last day, they told me when I walked in, my attorney told me, you going to prison today. Well, that ain't good. And when he tell you that, and what happened was I didn't go to prison. The judge ended up telling me to go home and keep doing what I was doing, and which is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I continue to do that, and my life continues to get better. All days aren't just perfect. But when they're not, what I know to do is take a look at me, and what should I be doing different, and how could I be doing better, and really what the steps have done for me, a lot. But what they've done is made my life better. It's made all my relationships better, and I think a good life is built on good relationships. And Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to look at myself and to make my relationships better. I had a bad day yesterday, and snapped at my wife. Didn't say anything really out of line, but I knew it wasn't loving. And so what I know what to do. I have to go back and make that amends, tell her I had no right to talk to her like that. That's not the man I want to be. And she probably gets tired of hearing me say that sometime, but I'm going to keep doing it because that's just what I do. And really what I try to do is do more for others than I do for myself. And if I can do that, I can have a good life, And a matter of fact, a great life, a life I never knew was possible. I'm done. I could go on and on. I won't. I know everybody's probably tired of hearing me, but I will say this. I have more fun. I have a better time. I'm more at peace. I'm not financially insecure anymore. I don't operate out of fear most days. I try not to be selfish and self-centered. I don't regret my past. you know, what I'm saying is a lot of you guys will recognize that the promises have manifested themselves in my life, and it continues to, that every day and every year it gets better. And so I expect this coming year to be better, because last year was better than the year before that, and the year before that was better than the year before that. Why wouldn't that continue? So I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing. I hope somebody got something out of it. I appreciate you letting me share, and I love you. Thanks.
All right.